Astronomy for Beginners, and today I'm going to do a DIY guide, and basically it's based on the Equinox 66, which is the ED Refractor that I found at the second-hand store. I've actually come across something that obviously for the Equinox 66 it's a very fast telescope of f6, which is ideal for imaging. But the main problem with the Equinox 66 is that if you're using small chipped CCDs like the Orion Starshoot G3, the main problem is the chip is very small, and the main problem is when you're imaging big deep sky objects like the Andromeda Galaxy or the Orion Nebula, big objects like that, the chip is not sufficient enough to get everything in that entire picture. So it's all to do with the focal ratio, and the chip size of the camera determines how big the wide field image is going to be. Now if you're using DSLR, you're one of the lucky ones, is that you don't really need a focal reducer as such. Maybe use a field flattener and that's fine. But for the guys who've got the CCDs and you've got the tiny chip ones, you need to really get that wide field image scale up, and the only way to do that is to use a focal reducer and field flattener. Obviously it's two things in one. Ideally you can use a focal reducer on its own, but the main problem with focal reducers, it will speed up the optics, it'll make it quicker, you get a wide field, but then you'll get a slight curvature on the edges, and that curvature will literally distort the star field pattern. So what you're trying to do is ideally you want a field flattener as well to eliminate that process as well. Alright, there's nothing wrong with your telescope, it's just how it is, and that's why I use all these special attachments and all that, these focal reducers and these field flatteners to try and eliminate this error in the images, which is completely fine. Now, trouble with the Equinox 66 is that there's only a few focal reducers that may work on this telescope. There is one out available in telescope service. They offer they do a 0.8 times focal reducer and field flattener for it, but I have not. That's the only one I've seen, and it will speed up the optics of that Equinox to around about f5. There aren't any much more field flatteners and focal reducers for that telescope. You can use a 0.5 focal reducer from Altair, from Rover Valley Optics you can get, but again it's only a field reducer, so it doesn't flatten the field, so you'll still get the hint of curvature around the star patterns. Alright, so it does work, but by God it will speed your the Equinox to an F3, which will be lightning fast, collecting that light photons really quickly. But so anyway, so I've been hunting around, going from the internet, and still struggling to find some sort of field flattener and focal reducer for the scope, and only Telescope Service seems to offer this for this Equinox 66. Because of its short focal length, it's very difficult. They do a lot of focal reducers and flatteners for a variety of refractors, ranging from f7, but as soon as you go past the f6, the f5 boundaries, it gets really difficult and there isn't much choice. So I've come up with an idea. I'm not guaranteed it's going to work until I test it out, but I did a bit of homework and I figured out that there is a way to fit this Equinox 66 by fitting a field flattener, a photocool reducer, basically I found out you could use, I've got an Altair Astro 0.6 photo reducer and field flattener, and that will lower the speed of the optics down to about f3.6, which is really fast. It's quick enough, but it gives you enough sort of wide field you need for the bigger DSOs. So what we're going to do is now we're going to take a look on the attachments and the equipment you're going to need, alright, to enable you to adapt it to the Equinox 66. Now I don't know if this might work for the Equinox 80, but it is a bit of trial and error. I reckon it will work on those telescopes as well. Alright, but I'm going to take a look now, and I'm going to show you the item you're going to need to fit this item.
Okay, we're on to my Equinox 66. Again, as I mentioned before, very compact telescope, excellent little astrograph. Alright, optics are absolutely amazing. Alright, you can never get a much sort of ideal scope for the money. Alright, and again, as I mentioned before, with astrophotography, as long as you've got a decent mount and it's EQ polo lined and it's tracking these objects, you can take long exposure astrophotography on the DSOs and all that at a timed rate, and you get some amazing pictures. Now, the main problem about this scope is, as I mentioned at the beginning, is that you've got very, very limited photocool reducers and field flatteners available for the scope, and Telescope being the only one company that offers the 0.8 times, which is very good. I would say it's a very good quality from a Telescope service without a doubt, but again, it's only a 0.8. I really was hoping to try and get something just a little bit smaller, because the main problem is this. Right, don't get me wrong, this is the Orion Starshoot G3 colour camera. Alright, you can get the mono of this, but the main problem is when I take this nose piece is this. It's a tiny chip. Alright, it's literally it's just a very tiny chip. It's around about 752 by 752 it is, around about that, which is fantastic. It is actually okay for zooming in on the planetary nebulas and really faint galaxies which are very small in the sky. Alright, this is the ideal chip size you would use for those objects. But however, if you're trying to image Pleiades, or you're trying to image Andromeda Galaxy and all the big DSOs and wide field shots, you are really going to struggle with this CCD. But however, all is not lost. Now, if my calculations serve right, I believe that this is the Altair Astro Lightwave 0.6 reducer and flattener. I believe that this will work onto the Equinox 66 and also work on the Equinox 80 as well. Because the Equinox is an f6, if I combine this with the 0.6, I will have an f3.6, which will try and boost up and widen field and get much more of the DSO that I'm trying to image. Alright, so basically you do require a certain amount of stuff. Now I'm not quite sure if this is going to work. Alright, but if it does, hopefully I will show you an image and all that posted on a later date once the skies are cleared, and then I'll show you how the image will look. But for my calculations, I reckon this will be totally fine for this small chip CCD. Alright, and I don't think it's going to affect any results into the images itself. However, this is not really recommended for CCDs that have a very big chip inside, you know, almost like, you know, the QHY8L for example is a large chip, you know, or the QHY9, that also has a large chip. Anything larger than that, you might be struggling. But like a chip like an Attic 314L, maybe it's probably the biggest you're going to go for, which is that's 11mm sort of chip size. So now, as I mentioned before, is that you have to take off certain attachments, alright, but there are certain attachments that I found. This one is a Barder 2-inch low profile attachment. Now, this attachment has series of threads. Obviously here it has a basically has a T2 thread, and if you unscrew the ring here, and if you unscrew the little ring on the side, it also has an M42 thread on there as well. Alright, so there's basically 2 threads in this Barder low profile 2-inch attachment. Inside here you have an internal thread, which is a filter thread from the outside, okay, which will enable you to screw in 2-inch filters. Alright, and inside there, in that one, there's another thread which you can attach a T2 male thread. Alright, so when you unscrew the follicle reducer, okay, you take the cap off there. Alright, when you unscrew that, you can screw that on top of there. But, however, there is a problem. The thread is just not big enough, you know, to screw into that thread, and that when it comes to the problem. So you can get these Barders from a lot of good telescope shops in the UK, and they're relatively cheap. Probably cost about £10 or so for this Barder. It has to be the Barder low profile 2-inch adapter, okay, camera adapter. This is what you're going to need. Now this is we can get from Telescope Service. This is called a variable T2 extension, which extends from 17mm to 23mm. This is a variable and extension tube, alright, and it contains an external T2 and an internal T2 thread. Alright, now one thing to point out is that you can readjust that, and you can connect this directly onto here, like so, onto the photo reducer or field flattener. But the main problem is, though, you've got to think about when you're fitting any photo reducer or field flattener, you've got to have a certain amount of space for that gap to fit. Basically, this Altair Lightwave FR and FF, I call it now, I'm going to shorthand it, is this requires a 55mm air gap. Basically, for this FR, for it to work properly and to ensure that you get your images field flattened and get the maximum effect of the photo reducing, it needs to be within 55mm plus or minus. You can get away with, so you know, it's only 1mm out between each bit, alright, but it's very crucial that this goes with that gap between the CCD itself, alright. So the CCD also has a back focus. Now you can go and search that on your CCD and find out what's the back focus you need for the FF to go into focus. Now, believe it or not, the Orion Starshoot G3 camera has a back focus of 19mm. So basically, what you're trying to do is you've got to get that gap, alright, and this is what you're going to have to do. you take off the variable extension tube, which is a fantastic quality engineer mechanical adapter from Telescope Service, and you basically unscrew the fine threads. Top tip is put a little bit of lithium bicycle grease, just a tiny bit on the threads, which makes it easier to screw it out. Alright, just a little bit. It just makes it just a little bit easier, and it doesn't damage your threads, and ensures that your threads are not, not going about to cross thread, because you don't want to cross thread these fine threads. Basically, it leaves you the this end, which has a very tiny step compared to this one, which has a tiny little thread here, but a bit more space. This is what you're looking for, this sort of gap here. Basically, you then grab all your border T2 adapter, or your border 2-inch adapter, alright, low profile adapter. You then screw this end into the border, okay. And again, as I mentioned before, it's a little bit easy for me because I'm using just one hand, alright. But when you first screw this in, you have to use both hands, and if it squeaks the threads, just put a little bit of this, tiny little bit of this lithium grease, and it will help it lubricate the threads. And basically what you're trying to do is you screw this all the way to the bottom until it stops. So you keep screwing it. It will get a bit stiff for a bit, and you just screw that in. Okay, till it stops. Right, that basically now forms your spacer. You then take off the dust cap, 0.6 FR and FF, and you screw from this end, as I mentioned about that gap here, you screw it on there like so. Alright, nice and easy. Carefully do not cross the threads, whatever you do. Alright, because these threads are very, very delicate. Alright, once it screws in, screw this in all the way in. Alright, obviously I'm screwing this in by one hand, and obviously I've got a clean surface. You're wondering, oh my god, you're going to scratch the lens on this bottom piece. Well, actually I've actually got a dust cap underneath here, so it does not scratch the bottom part of the photoreducer. Alright, so I basically have protected it anyway. But in theory, when you are going to use it, you take the dust cap and you fit it on the telescope. But this is just for demonstration purposes. Right, so that basically leaves you that gap. Alright, and then what you do, you grab your Orion Starship G3 camera, you take off the 1.25" nose piece, and inside here you have this internal thread here on this ring here, and believe it or not, again, this will screw in very nicely, and it takes some time because I'm doing it one-handed. It's not very easy when you're doing it one-handed, but you just screw this in all the way in until it fits, until it stops. Okay, that now stops. Basically what you've done now is you've now fitted your camera onto the FR/FF and using those adapters, and that's basically bang on 55 millimeter of the air gap. But basically what I've done is it's basically 90 millimeter from that end, from the back focus of the CCD to the gap here. It's around about 40 millimeters from there to there. Alright, but you lose 4 millimeter from the thread here, the limit of the 55 millimeter air gap. Alright, you can go either way. You can be 1 millimeter out either way, plus or minus. but that gap is very crucial because you want to ensure that this FF or FF works efficiently. Basically what you do now, you take off the 1 1/4 or whatever. As I mentioned on the last guide, ideally if you've got an Equinox, is get yourself the 2-inch adapter and the 48 thread, which is here, which you can get, which you screw over the M48 thread over, and it enables you to screw in a 2-inch holder, eyepiece holder. And then what you do is make sure all your screws are tight, and then you fit it straight through here. Also, if you've got a dust cap, make sure you take the dust cap from this end, and then you just fit it straight away like so. Now you have a complete setup now of this Equinox 66, right? And this Equinox 66 now will be an f3.6. Now I haven't really tested it as such. I will once the skies are clear, but that should be able to work quite well. Because it's a small chip anyway, I don't think I'm going to get any problems with vignetting and any other optical deficiencies within the photocal train. But basically now I will be able to take images of Andromeda Galaxy and really big details like that with this camera. Now this will speed up to about f3.6, and which will be mega fast. It's almost half of the photocal ratio of this telescope. But again, haven't tried it as such, but I'm hoping it works. I've done a bit of homework, so I'm hoping that this should work. I am fully aware that this lightwave Altair Astro, the 0.6 F or FF, only works around about f6.5, and so I'm guessing, alright, from the ideally this you shouldn't use that, but I've looked into a lot of few forums, and some guys reckon that it's totally fine with an f6 telescope. So I'm going to go for the plan, and I'm going to use the 0.6 as the optical device I'm going to use for this telescope. So obviously I'll keep you posted to let you know. Once the skies are clear for me at my end, I will let you know, and I'll post you some of images and all that to show you guys and girls, that to show it and demonstrate if it works. Alright, so thanks for watching this guide, and I hope you have clear skies. Goodbye.